Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Particle Accelerator podcast, where we talk to future thinking business leaders about how to grow their business and accelerate outcomes. I have a special guest with us today, Ed Holmes. Ed, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Ben. So my name is Ed, already been said. I live in Enumclaw, Washington, which is about 45 minutes outside of Seattle, right at the base of Mount Rainier. I am an expert in helping people get unstuck. So I'm a pastor, speaker, and coach. I predominantly work with people in the tech sector, real estate, and nonprofit, largely working with teams and individuals around how they relate to stress. And then my wife and I also run a creative company, and we are huge outdoor enthusiasts. I do a lot of fishing, not necessarily a lot of catching, but definitely a lot of fishing. And have recently taken up fly fishing, and we overland, we camp, shoot gun, like anything outside. We love being right at the base of Mount Rainier. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Oh, awesome. Great intro. So what was your first job? And I mean, like, what was your first job? My first job was a paper boy. So I'm interested, what was your first job?
Yeah, so I pushed carts at a grocery store, kind of superstore type place called Fred Meyer. So
awesome. Yep. Fred Meyer.
In Portland, Oregon, or outside of Portland, Oregon, which means that I spent a lot of time wandering around in the rain, pushing wet carts around. And it gave me a real appreciation for rising through the ranks. So I understand those entry-level jobs and the importance of them. And I was also very ready to not have an entry-level job anymore. So, yeah.
Awesome. What toy or hobby did you have as a child that inspired what you do career-wise today?
Man, I've loved playing with Legos. I love building stuff. And actually, like, you can't see we just got a new bookshelf, and I literally filled it with Legos. So we were putting together some last night. The scaffolding and building of something, like both working from a plan and then also just free form, like, I want to see if I can build this shape, build this thing, make it stand, is fascinating. And that's largely what I help people do with their lives, is scaffolding purpose, fulfillment, adventure. Like, if we're going to get unstuck to what? What are we building? Where are we heading towards? What would it feel like is ours to do? And so, yeah, I've enjoyed doing that at leading teams and then also working with individuals.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like a lover of frameworks, like just provide a perfect framework.
Yeah.
Really cool. What was your favorite and least favorite course in college?
So I didn't take a lot of college, full disclosure, struggled pretty heavily with depression and then addiction in college. So I went to Bible college for about a year. The headiest class I had was on the book of Romans, and the professor was brilliant, but was so monotone. So I would have to get up and walk around in order to make it through class. But I loved creative writing. So I left Bible college and did a year studying poli-sci at a local community college, thought I was going to work in politics. Creative writing really intrigued me. And then anything with math. I have always disliked anything to do with math. And I'm so
That's awesome.
I'm thankful for smartphones and calculators, and my wife is good at math. So it all worked out for me.
Perfect. What quote from a famous person lives in your mind rent-free?
Oh, The Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt. I have it hanging in our living room. The idea that those who err and err valiantly, like, I want to spend my life building something, and if I go down swinging, then at least I tried. And just real quick, I found it really profound that speech was given to a group of French aristocrats outside of Paris. And the whole premise of his speech, of which The Man in the Arena is a snippet, is to a group of people who are literally paid to think. And Roosevelt is saying, we forget that both our countries were built on the backs of people that do things. And it, like, how much our world has become fascinated with knowledge work, forgetting that, man, it is good for us to get under load, do some stuff, build some stuff. And so, I repeat that to myself often. It's important to get out there and sweat.
Yeah, you need to create rather than consume.
Mm-hmm. And just because I'm thinking doesn't mean I'm creating.
Right. Love it. Yeah, that's cool. What do you think the greatest invention or discovery in the past 300 years is?
Oh man, I love the internet, and also greatly dislike it. And I'm a life. My strength finders learning is number one. I love learning new stuff, and so I was literally about 4 scientific papers deep on hummingbirds the other day because I find it fascinating the way their wings move. They're not supposed to move that way. Like that, and the fact that I can get to that and learn it. And again, as someone who didn't go to college, I went to college for a little bit, but especially not in the things I study now, that I can read white papers and I can give myself entry level courses on things and learn is a huge deal.
Yeah, absolutely. On that topic, Rachel and I went to the biohacking conference like a couple of weeks ago, Dave Asprey's biohacking conference. And one of the things I was noticing or recognizing is the NAD. Like everybody wants to boost their NAD, which is like the anti-aging or repair signal from inside the cell. And so I was just seeing all this stuff like, supplement your NAD. I'd been seeing social media saying like, oh, MNN and all this. And so this lady was giving a talk. She has a scientific paper out and she's reviewing it live with the audience in like a little room at the conference. And her whole take on how she broke down the cellular biology and how MNN or the RN supplements were basically just creating another issue with it's like a methylation issue. And she made that so digestible for me. Now, of course, her motivation was that she had a supplement that she felt would boost NAD inside the cell, but it was still like, oh, that's why NAD IVs don't work, and that's why like she just had so much and just to be able to participate in that, and then like that her content that she presented is totally free and out there, and like have somebody make sense of why it's super hard to get the cell to produce more NAD. It's not just, you can't just put it in the body. I was like, just to be able to get that level of information so easily was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that we really have no excuse anymore to not know.
Right.
And that is also a curse, right? Like the curse of a highly inquisitive person like me is I can't learn everything, and yet I want to learn everything. And so even learning can be a distraction to my productivity at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So what tech trends significantly impacted you and your industry, and how are you responding to that?
Yeah. So the digital course has been a game changer. I don't have to stand in front of rooms or even be on calls like this in order to coach people. So we recently integrated a platform called Kajabi that allows us to do everything from landing pages to emails to online course to even the payment platform for those courses. It's all integrated into one thing. Did not realize the amount of overhead tax we were wasting Frankensteining all these different solutions. So the fact that I can get on a call like this, do a podcast like this, people find out what I do, they go to our Kajabi. I may never meet them, and yet our content can have a profound impact on them is fascinating. I mean, the digital course has been a game changer for us.
That's really cool. That is so cool. So, what are 3 technology innovations you are betting on to drive your business growth? Sounds like Kajabi. Are there any other? I mean, so cool that now you can offer folks digital coaching guide on stress management. They can digest that and start to implement the practice. And then folks that feel like they need extra help, they can reach out to you. But you're able to serve so many people just based on that kind of intro content through Kajabi. What other technology innovations are you betting on to drive your business growth?
Yeah, I mean, AI has been huge. So, for example, you can go to our Instagram put in smart keys and be emailed, and that triggers email flows that send you PDFs, information, content that we've already written. So starting to leverage, I mean, it's allowed it to be me and my wife. Like we're scaffolding a business that has multiple offerings where integration and automation is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, which we're really, really thankful for. So, and then, I mean, I do a lot of writing, do a lot of writing. So being able to use things like large language models like Gemini, a personal favorite of mine, to curate what, like, instead of it, again, because I'm so interested in learning vast subjects, asking Gemini to curate down. If I was going to learn something, I can't tell you how many times I've asked it to explain something complicated at a high school level. So I can start wrapping my mind around it. And then obviously there's some fact checking to be done and making sure you're not being led astray by the LMN, but at the large language model. But at the end of the day, to be able to take a haystack and find the thing that's most relevant for me, and I don't have to be the one figuring out the right Google search, is massive. And we're super thankful for that.
Gemini is also really good at tone, which I imagine with your space, tone is really important because you want to have the right tone for the coaching aspect, which can sometimes need to be firm, but also soft and like balancing that. I had another guest. He said that he uses Gemini as almost like therapy because he'll just use all his expletives and all of his rough language and just like give it like how he really feels about the situation. And then he'll ask Gemini, like, can you give me a note to give somebody this direction in a more politically correct or employee friendly tone? And he, almost worked it into that's a great tip.
Yeah. Another one that I'm using is Grammarly. I'm learning how to be a better writer using their AI as well. So it's really cool because not only does it, hey, there should be a comma there, don't forget a period here. It also this is why I get an email every week. These are things that we have found as issues in your writing in light of the tone you want to have. And I can actually go take lessons and learn how to begin to resolve those. So I'm literally giving myself an education as a better writer and learning how to study in a quarter of the time that I used to if I wanted to grow in those.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's so fun trying these different ways to. Nobody really likes to do the tedious part of writing. So getting your ideas on paper faster and then just editing and pruning from there is so great.
Another one that I'm a huge fan of, this is kind of anti-technology, but I love screen time. It has saved me from so many distractions. I personally do not have social media on my phone. I can't even get to it. Don't even have access to the App Store on my phone. Big part of my addiction was pornography and technology on top of that. And so I spent a lot of time on my phone. So now having safeguards, even things that white out my screen, so that way I can word dump and then take something into Grammarly. Like part of the distraction is that I can live edit. And then I don't stream of consciousness it anymore because I'm thinking about how I'm going to edit it as I write it, and it actually slows me down. So some of those tools that help me stay focused are also huge. Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, just so you can switch modes, right? Stay out of distraction mode. That's super huge. What are the most significant gaps between your digital ambitions versus the realities of today?
Man, I really see a world where people are unstuck and where they're creating a meaningful life, and we're using digital platforms to scale that and make it highly approachable, especially for people who don't know the value of coaching yet or personal development. That being said, figuring out the stinking social media algorithms and SEOs and staying on top of what's shifting and drifting has been borderline discouraging. And so we're currently evaluating how do we get this word out that we really is seeing transform our clients, the people we work with, and honestly is stress tested in our own lives in a way that is scalable and grabs people's attention. I think In our space specifically, working largely with stress, people have come to believe it's like the water we swim in. And so the thought of doing the things that help you resolve issues with stress at first feels stressful, especially the way we teach it. And so, getting over the hurdle of the noise, honestly, the noise that is in people's feeds and grabbing people's attention has been something we're still navigating and praying and asking for wisdom for. Yeah.
Yeah. You have like 15 seconds, right? You have 15, 30 seconds to say, hey, I know you have a problem that looks like this, and we have a solution to address it. And it just seems like a few years ago you had a minute, or a few years ago you had 2 minutes. Now you have so little time. And for something like managing stress, when feels like the water we live in, to differentiate and say like, hey, this is something that could actually help you. What have you learned in that, like navigating social media and advertising and digital marketing? Like what's come up for you there?
People have been really inspired by our story. So the fact that I'm a former addict, the fact that I'm a pastor, the fact that I've lost a significant amount of weight and kept it off, the fact that our marriage is thriving. We spend a lot of time adventuring. People love seeing videos of us out doing the stuff that we tell them to do and the congruence that comes from that. It's so interesting. One of the things that we teach is the importance of adventure. And we love our life. I'm not trying to escape it to going on an adventure. Life isn't an adventure for us. And I think people's souls are, and their hearts are, they know, sorry, this just came to my mind. So let me get it out kind of sloppily.
For sure.
This poet named Robert Service wrote a poem called The Call of the Wild. And it is a must read, I believe, for every entrepreneur, because I think it speaks both to, yes, time in nature, and yet the call to being an entrepreneur and a leader is a call to the wild. It's a call to an adventure in the unknown, right? And the last stanza says that they have taught you up in convention and you've become in essence, a student of their teaching. And yet the call of the wild is calling you. So go. And the more that we post and speak to the adventures we're going on, the more people are drawn to what we're doing. Because I think people are so stuck in the hamster wheel and feel like adventure is something that they'll get to eventually. And we end up, back to social media, we end up living other people's adventures when our soul is screaming, it's time for you to go on one. And so the more that we're showing that part of our lives, the more people are resonating with what we're doing.
Yeah, that's so cool. I read, I think his name is Zack Snyder. I know that's a movie guy. Maybe I'm wrong, but Becoming a King, John Eldridge kind of here. And he talks about just like the idea of carrying a pocket knife and how like just resuming that one thing, like, hey, I'm going to carry a pocket knife so that I can feel useful. I can feel like a generalist. I can feel prepared for adventure. Was like, just this little thing was kind of shifting for him. And then there's so much more things like that we don't say exercise because, we want to be better than everybody else. It's like, yeah, what if you need to run to help somebody out? What if you, need to run to help your kid? Like, that's not the time to say, hey, I wish I were in better shape. That's the time to already be there and be prepared for that. So absolutely.
Yeah. And I think another thing that's coming up for me in this is predictability is actually a stress response. So we don't realize that our brain doesn't want us to grow. Our brain wants things to stay the same, and it calls predictability control. So I feel safe in these predictable environments. We don't mean to, but the hamster wheel that we end up on is highly predictable. I know what my Monday through Friday looks like. I know what my job deliverables are, and I can just keep turning it over. All the while, we're looking over our shoulder, observing people going on these adventures. And yet the deeper we step, like every step on the hamster wheel keeps turning it over, right? And so we deepen our need for predictability by continuing to take those steps. So I'm a huge fan. I was talking to a CEO yesterday that I coach. Micro adventures, like go to a new lunch spot, or like ask your boss if you could switch up your schedule a little bit, or go work from the conference room instead of posting up in the exact same chair at this exact same desk every single day. These little micro changes begin to fuel that, like, oh, I don't have to do the same thing absolutely every day. So I love that idea of a pocket knife priming you for something new. Like, what's the new thing you could do that's outside of your routine? Even that starts to break you free of that stress response of needing predictability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quick little anecdote. I had just gotten a new pocket knife. I carried it to the restaurant with my kids. My kid goes to press the water button on the Coke machine and it sticks down. And I'm able to flip out the pocket knife and reset it before it turns into I'm overfilling my cup and I don't know what to do. And just that, like, I don't know, that'll always stick in my mind as like, hey, I was carrying a pocket knife and I was able to save this minorly catastrophic situation, because a kid with a very full water cup is kind of a disaster waiting to happen. But just to be prepared for something that came up, it was a micro adventure taking my kid to eat.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so cool. So as you're building this company, and you obviously have some very unique and distinct content that you're continuing to dig into and improve through your coaching practice. But what do you think is the biggest challenge to maintaining a competitive edge in your industry?
Yeah, it's to not be a mimic. Like, there's so much content out there. I mean, half the time, like Cam Newport just put out a book called Slow Productivity. Professor, brilliant communicator, brilliant mind. And I'm reading it and I'm like, man, I just want to work for Cam. Right. Like he wrote what I would write. Like, this is a brilliant approach for executives and teams when it comes to taking care of yourself and avoiding burnout. Right. And it's really easy then to spend more time parroting what other people are doing than integrating and living it and doing stress tested approaches myself. And like, I'm not for everyone, right? Like, what is our group specifically? Like I said, tech, real estate, nonprofits, and then we do stuff with gyms as well because of our health journey being part of our story. Like, okay, I'm not for everyone. So who is that niche and what's my voice to them? Right. Like, I can spend, kind of back to the man in the arena thing. I can spend so much time reading, learning, thinking that I've never put these things into practice. And this is, in my opinion, where coaches get a bad rap, right? Is they build some success, which I am so for, right? Like, you need to have a resume that speaks to itself. And they've never done their own personal development journey. They've never done deep work. They've never really done issues where they've looked in the mirror, done things where they've looked in the mirror and seen themselves. And so they can teach you a framework to success. And I realized I was doing that and I was just perpetuating people being on the hamster wheel. I would go in and do trainings for teams on productivity and they were all exhausted. They didn't need another productivity tool. They needed to figure out how to get space and how to get water back in their sponge, right? And so I'm realizing, all right, if I just follow the trend, I personally was convicted that I'm adding to the problem. And so there's this unique voice as I've been taking in content to own and to step into with confidence and know that who are mine to serve, I will get their attention.
Yeah, no, that's so good. So good to know that the competitive edge is not being, I think of music. Like, if you're a musician and you're worried about sounding like everybody else, you wouldn't play anything, because, music has tons of styles and there's been so much of it over human history. But the guy that says, hey, I'm not going to be a cover band, I'm going to make something original, and you can tell me it sounds like something else, I don't really care. I'm going to make sure that it's meaningful to me. And even on the 100th show, the meaning to me comes out. And that is a good musician. I mean, that's somebody who is going to do really well, is that they're not bothered by the idea that some of the stuff is similar, or that they were influenced by some great musician in the past, but that they're ready to make it their own meaning, and it gives them chills even even the 100th time they play the song, the meaning comes out.
Yeah. And because I'm so fulfilled by what I do and I know that I'm in my purpose, like I'm passionate about learning. I have not run out of things to learn on this and I gobble it up. And I speak on this stuff all day, every day, coaching, speaking, and I have not grown tired of it because I know I'm in my zone doing what my purpose is. So I believe all of us can find that and to live into it. And that ultimately becomes a competitive edge. That this is a phrase that's coming to me. In a world of curation, authenticity is the new attention grabber. And I think even in coaching, there's I personally do not use social media. We have a social media for our business, but I don't post. I'm building a business as a speaker and a coach. And people are like, hey man, I want to follow you. And I'm like, no, it's me. I don't want you to follow some curated thing of me. What you saw of me today speaking to you or speaking in a room or whatever, that's authentically me. That is my goal, is that people are moved by, first of all, I practice what I preach. And because I practice what I preach, they feel the authenticity in that. I'm not a curation of well thought out thoughts because I'm trying to buy a curriculum. I legitimately want to help you get unstuck and create a meaningful life. And we're seeing that pay dividends and be our competitive edge more than some perfectly curated 15-minute attention grabber or 15-second attention grabber. Yeah.
So cool. So as you're thinking about the future and you're thinking about how to grow your business, how are you connecting your roadmap with your business strategy, and just walk us through how you're kind of thinking about your planning?
Yeah. You caught us at a really unique time. We have drastically slowed down, drastically slowed down. So, I'm an Enneagram 1. My strength finder is learning, responsibility, and competition. I want to be able to beat you and then be able to tell you how I did it. And I am a default go person. I'm a high performer. I'm highly competitive. I'm a CrossFitter and an endurance athlete. I go hard. And I realized that I was putting so much stuff out that I actually wasn't being hyper intentional with what I was building in care of my clients. So I'm a coach who helps people get water back in their sponge. I help them get off the hamster wheel. And then I was just barraging them with so much content and so much information. It was just always go, 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 go. And so we've recently drastically slowed down. And we've realized that because of the type of work we do, we're largely referral based. People need to hear me speak. They need to interact with me and hear my approach before I step into it. I think I'll probably answer this question. If we were to have this conversation again, I'd probably answer it differently in a year. Right. And this is what we're wrestling with right now. How do I help people get off the hamster wheel without being on the hamster wheel myself with my business? Right. And really trust the pace at which things are growing and becoming. And man, when I could be on the phone call creating speaking engagements, I'm out on the Cedar River fly fishing right now. And weirdly enough, I've had more people intrigued when they find out what I do with my day and wanting that. Right. Because again, I believe authenticity is becoming my growth strategy. When I have conversations like this, people are deeply intrigued by my answer, and we're seeing our income grow. And I am not anti-business plan. I'm not and yet at the same time, I believe we're kind of a unique case study where the biggest testimony and business growth plan for us is our authenticity to our tools that we teach. Right. And so, a lot of quality over quantity right now. And at the same time, we are still running Facebook ads, still trying to get the word out to as many people as possible, and still learning to, maybe if I back up, authentically asking, is that authentic to us too? Right. So I don't have a CEO visionary specific answer to that. And it's also very authentic to where we're at right now.
So we've seen that. I do a lot of CTO advisory where I'm advising a CEO on this kind of stuff, their technology plan. And we've seen that if the CEO backs off a bit and creates a little margin, then their teams what they get is they get an approachability from their senior leaders. So to have a little more of an open door policy where their senior leaders can kind of come to them and say, hey, I was thinking about this certain thing. Wouldn't it be a great idea if there's been a lot of genius come from that, from their team, rather than blocking their calendar up the wazoo and not having that little bit of margin? I think we're about to see a trend. I think you and I both have received the 12-week work year. EOS is doing a great job with this idea of time compression. I personally like it because I was an annual planner, and now for me to kind of pull back and say, hey, what do I want for my quarter, is helping me with some of my personal drive. But what we come back to is this idea of be versus do, which is kind of like what you're getting at. And as we advise CEOs of just, hey, just be the CEO, just hold frame, create space for your team, and see what happens. We've seen a lot of value come from that. And then, telling them, hey, this is what I want to accomplish a year. This is what I'd love to accomplish in a quarter, and then holding them accountable to that, but being available to listen as to what comes up as that happens has been a real recipe, like a recipe for success and overall positivity and happiness, which does impact your leadership.
Yeah. When I'm clear on my being, doing flows effectively, right? When I start with doing, I shrink my being. And ultimately, all creative endeavors are a beingness issue. Like, I speak to CEOs who feel really stuck in their business, or executives, or a whole team company feels really stuck. And then my first question is, where's the margin to be creative? Like, beingness is like, again, talking to a CEO yesterday, his words were, if my business is going to grow, I got to grind. And I was like, grinding and creativity they don't work together, right? Like, it is like if you read books like Creativity Inc. and there's another one I'm drawing a space on, but the people who creatively found solutions that we now novel at did so on walks, and did so taking naps and painting and being in the backcountry and exploring. And we have, unfortunately, this is a Cam Newport premise in that productivity, slow productivity. We have replaced busy as a useful metric for effective. And busy and effective are not the same thing. And so I work with people all the time that they're literally in a dryer cycle of busy. Like, the hamster wheel turns into a dryer. And then they walk into a creative meeting where their team is asking them for solutions, and their sponge is dry. And they literally have nothing to give. So that's why I, on conviction, when I speak publicly, do not give time management tools. Most people do not need another 15 minutes to squeeze nothing out of. Most people need space to restore their emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual energy. So then when the demand shows up, they actually have something to give.
That's so good. Like, you've just touched on like my last handful of questions, because what I feel most innovators want to figure out is how to create a culture of innovation within their organization. And so there's an anti-pattern emerging from what you're finding, which is more time management, like getting things done faster, maybe an anti-pattern against creative thinking. So that's kind of huge. Like, I don't even know how to take that, because I mean, my team is working a list where we're trying to get a bunch of work done within a sprint. And so finding a space for creativity is largely up to their own motivation to take a break, to go for a walk, and to have a good transition. Why don't we use that as, like, if you wanted to become a more innovative, creative person, what would be like 5 things that you could do to help unlock some of that innate creativity?
Yeah. I'm going to give you 6, and there's 6 that we teach. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So there's There's 4 data-backed, 100%, 10 out of 10 times help you process out stress. And when we're on the hamster wheel, right? And we tell it, so the hamster wheel, the promise of the hamster wheels is if you run a little bit harder for a little bit longer, then you can get off. And I guarantee you're going to get off. You're just going to be flung off instead, right? Like we've all seen the video where the hamster wheel ends up going faster than the hamster can move its feet. And then it does this and then it gets flung off, right? So the way we get off the hamster wheel, when we feel our chest tighten, shoulders raise, brain start to race, we go into a stress response due to a stressor, right? Like a demand on the to-do list, an overwhelming to-do list, stuff is getting left behind, whatever is bringing you into that stress response. And I don't have time to get into this, but stress is a story, by the way, and it's one we can change. We can talk about that another time. But when we find ourselves in a stress response, the first 4 create room for the last 2, which we'll talk about. So move, pray, breathe, meditate. That's the second. So move first. Literally, please, for the love of God, get up from your desk and go for a walk. When you feel that stress response happen, do a lap around your building, go to the bathroom and come back. Disengage from the stress response. The solution is not to hammer harder. We're just picking up the speed on the hamster wheel, and it actually decreases our productivity. So I have high profile salespeople that I work with, and they'll do push-ups after a sales call. Or like I'll have people literally every 45 minutes do a lap around their office and move. Second is pray, breathe, or meditate. We're a huge fan of box breathing. We're a huge fan of prayer, giving up the thing that I'm stressed about to a higher power, right? Number 3 is journal. Whatever is mentionable becomes manageable is my favorite Mr. Rogers quote. And when things stay in my brain, they're not required to make logical sense with the other things they're connecting to. When I write them out, it's the practice of mentioning what's stressing me to me. And out of that, I end up finding solutions often. And then number 4 is connection, calling someone you love who loves you and saying, man, I'm jammed up about something right now. Or like, what a novel thought, just calling for connection's sake, to be reminded that you're not alone and you're in community, right? So those 4 are our 101s. Now, the ones that foster creativity, and this is so anti to our corporate environment, is play and awe. We forget that we learned creativity playing as kids. And for some reason, we tell ourselves that that's silly for adults. And the same, like we learn cooperation, we learn problem solving skills, we learn creative solutions. I mean, I can't tell you how many different ways I played basketball with something that wasn't a basketball. That's a creative solution with a similar outcome, right? Like I love one of Disney's definitions of creativity is 2 known things combined in a new way. When I play, I start to see varying frameworks outside of the one that I'm hammering, frustrated, I'm not getting the result I want. So what's it look like individually to play, right? Like I still put together Legos. My wife and I were putting together Legos last night, having a really cool conversation around stuff that we're working through with this content that we're developing, right? Or fly fishing is play to me, or backpacking and hiking. Like play, what's play look like for you? Anything from building a fort in the living room and watching a TV show to playing Frisbee outside. Like what's play look like for you? And if you have kids, why isn't your life ripe with play and creativity in those moments, right? The second is awe. So awe is a crazy, fascinating emotion. Our understanding of it's only like 25 to 30 years old. And I could geek out on this. Most of us, if we experienced awe daily, would not run out of creativity. We're so focused on the hamster wheel and we're turning things over that we don't pick our head up and marvel at anything. So awe requires perceived vastness, right? And then a need for accommodation. So my wife and I did this hike to a fire lookout up by our house. And we were sitting in the fire lookout and we were the only humans up there. It was a bad weather day. And we had to hike through a snowfield to get to this lookout. And we're staring at hundreds of miles of forest land. And there is nothing. Nothing. The sound was so deafening silent. It sounded like I had noise canceling headphones on with brown noise. I mean, eerie. And I sat there in awe.
Right.
And came back and could not write fast enough.
Right. Kind of unlocking.
Yeah. So for most people, the creative solution is not sitting around a boardroom hammering it. For most people, the creative solution is some time and play and experiencing awe. Why? Because then your subconscious brain has a chance to speak to you.
Mm-hmm.
When we're sitting with so much stimulus and the whiteboard is flying and we're trying to jockey for position and who gets credit for this idea and we're going to find the solution, no one subconscious brain is speaking because we're all in fight or flight. We're all in competition. There's so much pressure. When we play and have space for awe, we start finding creative solutions. Like creativity is an inherently space-based act.
Mm-hmm.
Creativity needs space. And then we claim that we're these innovative solutions. It's so interesting to me when you read about tech entrepreneurs who really changed the world. They had space when they came up with their idea, but then they fill the space with the doing of protecting the idea, and then are frustrated that innovation doesn't come anymore. The thing that brought about the new idea will bring about the next idea, and it's probably something like play and space and awe.
Yeah, that is so good. It put words around the, in Texas, we don't have mountains to go climb or whatever. But as I remember getting such a huge stress relief response from taking my kids to soccer.
Yeah.
It would be Friday night. They'd had Friday night open games where the kids rep themselves. So there's no competition. It's just the kids doing their own throw-ins and just running the game themselves. And parents might be around in case there's some like unsolvable debate, but for the most part, you just throw the ball back in and keep going. And I remember the vastness of the blue open sky that is Texas. And even just that was so like, this is awesome. This is what I do. I'm here on a Friday night or let my kids play soccer, and I'm just enjoying the vastness of the open blue sky. And remember, like, taking a picture and putting it on Instagram or something, because it did. So that's amazing to finally get words for that. Like, why was that such a great response? So what a hack that is, just to take a break, go play or enjoy some awe, enjoy some vastness nearby, and just like decompress in that way. How much better would that be than like playing video games for an hour, which is just a whole nother competition of skill and ultra focus in order to really feel good about the time. Very, very cool.
The thing I've found, I want to add one thing to that. One other caveat is go on an adventure. We talked about that at the beginning. Like, get in your car and drive somewhere without an agenda, or like grab your partner, spouse, significant other and say, all right, 1, 2, 3, where are we going? And pick one and just go, right? Like, our soul could use some adventure. You will not, it's so interesting. I'm generally in a fight with the teams that I speak to, conferences I speak at, CEOs I work with, because the tools I just gave feel like a waste of time. And again, most of us don't need tools to be more effective at doing. We need to be reminded we're human beings. And when our beingness is healthy, when we're emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically thriving, doing is efficient and effective. But again, when I start with doing first, I shrink my being, and we know that is burnout, right? Doing is, I can't remember the name of it, but the people that climb in the caves and find those really skinny tunnels, and somehow they keep,
Spelunkers.
Yeah,
the spelunkers. Yeah.
They keep fighting their way through these continually shrinking spaces. That's what leading with doing does. I tell myself, if I just keep shoving my way through, eventually I'll find space. And it just doesn't end. Like, I end up claustrophobic, and yet there's also no bottom to it.
Well, the doing is like a staying in control response, right? Mm-hmm. The being, it releases some element of control, and it says, hey, I'm gonna let go a little bit. I'm not gonna be irresponsible, because I still am responsible. Mm-hmm. And so I am responsible, and we will just Like, we'll deal with it as it comes. And then here's my plan on top of it, because I've taken the time to think through how I, like what I want to do, like who I want to be and what I want my life to look like. And then to doing flows.
Yep.
And that shift has been phenomenal for the people that you and I both know, that we see them transition in this way. And it's great. So we should probably I have one more question, which is just share an experience or give some advice to somebody beginning their journey as a professional. Like, what would you tell the 20-year-old you, or someone, kind of starting their digital journey, their professional journey?
Yeah, consistency beats intensity. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And when I optimize, was it Brian Tracy that has that idea of beginning with the end in mind? When I optimize for staying in the game, or in essence, like hiking to the top of Everest, when I optimize for that and stay consistent, like we have this principle that, so consistency beats intensity. Most of us want to get to Z and we're frustrated that we're at A. And so we'll jump to M, but in no way can we sustain that. And we end up crashing down to A at some point, right? It would be better for me to own where I'm at and allow A to build to B, to build to C. And then from a firm foundation, I keep leveling up. So my commitment at the end of the day is to lay on my hospital bed at the end of my life, surrounded by those I love, and hear them sharing stories of the things that mattered most to me. I heard this quote, I believe it's Mark Monson, said that at the end of the day, the only people who remember that you worked late were your kids. And it's like, man, I really want to make sure, if it means that I get there and it takes me a little bit longer to get there, then that's okay. I want to have my cake and eat it too. I want this mixture of purpose, fulfillment, and adventure, a meaningful life that keeps me unstuck. And that means staying consistent. And there are seasons of intensity, don't get me wrong. Like, there's seasons where I speak a lot, I travel a lot, and I'm also really consistent in the things that keep me healthy, even in those seasons of intensity.
Right. Yeah. Discipline is a thing for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Consistent discipline, not an unachievable, grindy discipline. Super good. So, if people like what you have to share today, how should they connect with you?
Yeah. So my email is ed@axioswellness.com. And you can go to axios.co on Instagram and find us there and shoot us a DM. We would love to serve you and connect. Like I said, I'm a speaker. I speak and I also coach. So anything I can do to help people get unstuck and move towards a meaningful life, I'm all about.
Awesome. So we should just do a little bit of extra credit here and just talk about how we met and how we met. So Ed and I are both in a mastermind group called Rise Up Kings. Mm-hmm. We met at one of their second level events. You went through your refinery at what number?
39.
And I was 36. And so then we went to a second level event and met each other. And I have a health coach. My health coach had been telling me, hey, you're overweight because you're stressed, or you can't change your weight because you're stressed. And I almost felt like it was like, well, what is stress? Like, it was the water that I was swimming in. And then I brought that up with you, and you're like, oh, well, shoot, I'm creating, I'm a stress coach. I'm creating. So, what was that side of the story for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was there because I was stuck and I really needed help getting unstuck. And even realizing while I was there, my own stress responses that were grinding me back into that predictable comfort zone. And then it was really cool that God brought about that conversation that, like, you're like, hey man, I feel really stuck in this. And honestly, part of the place I felt stuck was in growing our business and getting clear. I mean, you and I sat in your hotel room and talked for a couple hours and shared this really cool mutual exchange of value to each other. That was really, really fulfilling. That was really cool. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, super proud of what you've been accomplishing before and since. Because Mindbox is your in-gym brand, and then Axios is your commercial brand, or your corporate brand, B2B brand. And yeah, it's really been really cool to see all of like your content come together. And I can honestly say that every email I've received from you has been of value. Every conversation we've had, you are my phone a friend. So when I'm having a stress response and I need that end of day transition that you teach, you've been my phone a friend. I really appreciate it. So
Yeah.
thanks for being here. And we're not we're kind of plugging Rise Up Game. If you want to meet high level people like this, you need to go join one of those events, because it is people like us do hard things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
I feel the same about you. You have been a phenomenal sounding board when I am trying to figure out how the heck to be a legit business owner. So I'm so thankful for you too. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, man. All right, cool. I appreciate you being here today. And if you want to hear more from Ed, please reach out. We'll have his contact information in the show notes. And yeah, it's been awesome to talk about stress and how it ties in innovation. So thanks for being here, Ed.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.